Hello everybody, Killatia here. Hope you're doing well today. First thing first, yes, we still gotta do something about that blank wall in the background here. Especially considering that side has a lot going on, but that's not the focus of this video. The focus is on Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Now, before we dive into the review, I do want to say a few things. First thing first, it's really made for people who really paid attention to the franchise as a whole, especially the 5th season of the show that aired on Adult Swim a couple of years ago, because this takes place during the final episode of that season. So, yeah, definitely important to know what's going on in the game, because the game itself doesn't really give you much information about some of the characters that you'll experience throughout the journey. And secondly, the manual that comes with the physical version of the game isn't really much of a manual. It's more like taking like the very basic background story of the franchise itself, and some little character bios like Jack, Ashi from the 5th season, and Aku himself. So anyways, enough stalling. Let's dive straight into the review. Taking place during the final episode of the franchise, Samurai Jack uses Ashi's inherent abilities to travel back through time. Again, you have to watch the series, particularly the 5th season, to know exactly what's going on here. But before they can successfully go back to the past, Aku captures Samurai Jack and brings him into some sort of real-time limbo. He's not in the past, he's not in the present, not in the future, but in some sort of strange dimension that Aku can use to torment Jack. And the only hope Jack has to truly defeat Aku's evil scheme is to hack and slash his way through these mysterious time limbos to defeat the great evil once and for all. I will have to say the gameplay itself is simplistic, but definitely gets the job done. And there is a skill tree that you can use to increase Jack's specs as well. But you won't really get all the upgrades towards the end of the game. So repeated visits to previous levels are the key to really maxing out Samurai Jack's full potential. As I tried to allude earlier in this review, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time is a simple hack and slash brawler that doesn't really innovate, but it does the job well. As you can see in this footage, you'll be using mostly his magic sword, the only weapon that can truly destroy Aku. But there are plenty of other weapons you can collect as well to defeat some of the more tougher enemies quicker than you can. However, except for a few points towards the end of the game, I find myself using the sword more often than not. And of course, there are some long-range weapons here, like the bow and arrow, which is not only useful against flying enemies, but can be quite helpful in order to get some of the collectibles you will find throughout the game, as seen in this footage. And I do have to say the controls are pretty responsive throughout the game, so I haven't really had any issues with them whatsoever. The graphics themselves are pretty good in my opinion. Yes, they can be a little bit on the simplistic side, but Samurai Jack in general was always kinda simplistic, especially in the earlier seasons. I do like the fact that as Jack takes in more damage, his gi, or in some part of the game, his armor slowly deteriorates as a secondary form of a health gauge, just in case you're too intense in the battle to notice the main health gauge in the lower left corner. I was kind of disappointed at first that the game only ran at 30 frames per second on the Switch instead of 60 frames per second like I was kind of hoping for. But considering the screen can fill up with a lot of enemies very quickly, I can understand why they wanted to, lower the frame rate a little bit. To its credit, it has been like a constant 30 frames per second, as I have not noticed any slowdown during my playthrough. One other complaint that I can think of with the game is that the enemies tend to repeat themselves over and over again with each level. Now, to be fair, each new level also bring in new enemy types, but after their introduction, they'll just keep being reused over and over and over again. Now, it's not a problem specifically to Samurai Jack. I know a ton of other beat-em-ups that also come across this issue. It's just disappointing that this seems to be popping up in all sorts of different beat-em-up games over and over and over again. Overall, I have enjoyed my time with Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, but I wouldn't recommend it to the casual viewer of the series. If you had watched it from its humble beginnings on Cartoon Network to its mature finale on Adult Swim, then I would say yes, I would recommend it, but not necessarily at the current price point. It's about $40 digital and $50 physically. If you can find it for about $30 or even lower, I would say go on ahead and pick it up. And even if you get it for its regular price, there is plenty of content to keep you busy for a while. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you all have a good time and catch you all next time.